All right. Hello, my name is Cameron Smith. I am a fourth-year psychology doctorate student at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology here at Xavier of Louisiana. And today I'm going to be presenting on my dissertation topic, disrupting sedentary behavior in African American college students. So let's go ahead and get started. Um, so let's just start off by talking about sedentary behavior in health. So due to recent technological advancements and the rising rates of sedentary occupations in the US, sedentary behavior has become quite common throughout the lifespan. But what is sedentary behavior? Sedentary behavior is defined as any waking behavior that is characterized by an energy expenditure of less than or equal to 1.5 metabolic equivalents. So I know that might be a little jargony, but if you just think about any behavior while you're sitting, reclining, or lying down, this is what's characterized as sedentary behavior. So why is it so common? Within the past 60 years, the US has experienced a 23% increase in sedentary and light intensity occupations like trade and business services, and a 28% decrease in moderate intensity occupations such as like mining and logging. So with these trends, there's been a substantial decrease in daily occupational related energy expenditure of roughly 140 kilocalories for men and 124 kilocalories for women. So today, the average adult in the US spends anywhere from 54 to 57% of their total waking hours sedentary. So that's over half of your waking day spent sitting completely still. And increased sedentary behavior equals chronic health problems. So more than 4 hours of inactive sitting leads to inflammation in the body, whereas more than 9 hours increases the risk for all-cause mortality, indicating that individuals who are predominantly sedentary are at an increased risk of developing chronic health problems. And a common question that I get is like, okay, well, I exercise, isn't that enough? And usually what I say to that is prolonged routine bouts of sedentary behavior have been identified as life-threatening. It impairs one's health regardless of your physical activity levels. And this was quite shocking to me when I found this out, because I was always under the belief that, okay, if I run every other day or a couple times a week and I work out, I should be okay. But if you can take away any message from this presentation that I hope to get out of there, or I hope to get out there, is that sedentariness is considered an independent risk factor, and it's been shown to be linked to many diseases. And one of the main ones are cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, colorectal cancer, and metabolic syndrome. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So before we get into talking about African American college adults specifically, I want to talk about adolescence and through the lifespan. More than 12 million US adolescents do not achieve adequate levels of physical activity. And this is a pattern that begins in early childhood and persists into adulthood. And similarly, sedentary behavior appears to increase throughout the lifespan as well, with children, adolescents, and then adults alike dedicating more time towards activities like screen time and then occupational pursuits after that. So particularly college-age adults appear to be at an increased risk, as this population spends approximately 61% of their days sedentary. And some research shows that college age adults spend about like roughly 10 hours per day sitting during the weekdays and an upwards of 7 hours sitting on the weekends. And you have to think about all the time that college age adults spend studying and preparing for exams and completing assignments. So when thinking about health disparities in particular, African Americans experience higher rates of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, colorectal cancer, and metabolic syndrome when compared to other demographic groups, especially when we're comparing them to Caucasian samples. And this indicates a serious health disparity that's worthy of a lot of attention. Um, so African Americans throughout the lifespan, what research has shown is that African Americans spend more time dedicated to screen-based activities and have lower levels of physical activity when compared to other demographic groups. And this may in part may explain why African Americans disproportionately bear that burden of the health conditions that I previously outlined, and especially knowing that those health conditions are directly associated with a sedentary lifestyle. So knowing this, and since prolonged sedentariness is linked to harmful health outcomes that African Americans disproportionately experience, African American college students appear to be a very good population to study, as this population faces an increased risk of developing such chronic diseases that are associated with a sedentary lifestyle. So maybe the most important slide, and my favorite slide, is, well, what do we do about this? There's many things that people have done to account for sedentary lifestyles, and addressing the sedentary epidemic, what I would call an epidemic, researchers have focused their attention on using light intensity exercise interventions through active work desks as preventative measures. But why even bother with these active work desks in the beginning? And I think the rationale for pursuing this is really awesome, because we know that engaging in as little as 1 minute of light intensity exercise has been shown to offer metabolic benefits, and that's only 1 minute. So active work desks, such as like treadmill desks, and pedal desks, have been shown to reduce sedentary behavior in the workplace and increase that energy expenditure in both lean and obese participants, which I think is amazing. But there are some drawbacks to treadmills or treadmill desks and pedal desks, and users commonly experience decrease in work performance, and users of pedal devices report problems related to their knees hitting the underside of their desk, and their feet slipping off the pedals, and their chair sliding away from the pedaling devices. So another question would be like, well, what about standing desks? Why not standing desks? And the research on standing is really interesting as well, because that also seems to be an inactive sedentary behavior. So just standing alone, what I would say is inactive standing, is known to be a risk factor for many health problems, such as heart disease, knee osteoarthritis, varicose veins, leg cramps, oxidative stress, and blood accumulation in your lower limbs. So to address these concerns, there's been some pretty cool research lately on under-desk elliptical trainers, what I would call, or what we call, UDITs. And UDITs have been implemented in work settings to reduce excessive sedentariness while also maintaining work productivity. So the way in which UDITs are different is that there's an elliptical motion. So compared to up and down pedaling devices, that up and down motion, UDITs have a forward and backward pedaling motion, and this minimizes the risk of users hitting their knees on the other side of their desks, and it keeps your upper body still. And so it doesn't impact your work performance as much. And also, compared to inactive sitting and inactive standing, both healthy and obese UDIT users have been shown to burn more calories per hour and experience higher elevations in heart rate and oxygen consumption, while reporting little to no musculoskeletal discomfort or reduction in cognitive functioning. and I think a kind of cool caveat is like, in addition to all those health benefits, UDIT users report overall positive experiences and perceptions of these devices. So it seems to be pretty positive overall with these devices, and especially when you're comparing them to treadmill desks and pedal devices. So disrupting prolonged sedentary bouts with light intensity seated physical activity with UDITs appears to offer metabolic benefits while maintaining work productivity and minimizing risk of injury. And when I think about reducing sedentary behavior and increasing work productivity, I think of students. Um, so similar to combating excessive sedentariness at the workplace, academic environments have been modified to promote movement in the research that I've looked at. And the research that I've looked at, predominantly these studies have used pedal devices and standing desks, and they've implemented them in libraries and classrooms. And a great finding from those studies is that these devices appear to be feasible and acceptable amongst both student populations and instructor populations, which I think is a great start. However, those previous studies have some limitations that I hope that this study can cover and can answer for. So as discussed earlier, pedal and standing desks appear to cause some issues in terms of discomfort and work performance. Only 2 studies to date that I know of have actually retrofitted a library environment to reduce academic sedentariness. And knowing, like, similar to classrooms, libraries are predominantly sedentary. It's where students go to read and do homework and study. Um, but an interesting thing when we're thinking about HBCU environments, what I found in the research and the literature is that libraries are commonly frequented by African American students when compared to other demographic groups, such as like Caucasians. Um, in previous studies on active workstations in colleges, typically don't appear to recruit students from diverse ethnic groups. And this is a huge limitation that I'm hoping that this study will answer, and that we can research specifically, especially knowing that health disparity that African Americans experience in terms of sedentary related health difficulties. So overall, in building on the prior findings and addressing these limitations, I hope that my study can introduce units in an HBCU library to examine just how acceptable and feasible these devices are in decreasing sedentariness, and hopefully offering a free intervention for students to not only like continue to get their work done, but also to promote healthy behaviors and reduce that sedentariness, in hopes that this can be a preventative measure for them now, and also for students down the line. So yeah, interesting presentation because it's virtual, but these are my references here. If you all have any questions, please feel free to email me. I've included my email right here at the bottom. And if you have any questions about the references or the citations that I used for my oral presentation, please feel free to shoot me an email and ask me really any question that you have related to this topic or my presentation. I'd be happy to get back to you. But yeah, thank you so much for stopping by, and enjoy the rest of the conference.